I believe as an assistant, our job is to make their life easy, right? And then that's ultimately what makes you, even as a hygienist, like us more and want to work with us and trust us. My best advice is just think of it as a team. Like, we spend the most time with each other, right? Your work family is who you spend the most time with. So figure out how to make it work. If you don't have that good working relationship and communication, like, hey, let's help each other out, like I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine type of thing, then you don't have that. And then here just comes all this resentment. If we can kind of switch the thing, like from assistant and maybe hygienists viewing us as assistants, like we are there to cover your slack, and more so of we are a team, like how do we help each other? I think that would take a lot of the animosity away from it. So I think it's just if we understand each other a lot more and then really just focus on how do we be team players, then it's a lot more helpful.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast, an Endeavor Business Media production. This is episode number 380, and I am your host, Andrew Johnston. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. And I have some great news to share with you all. Last week, we hit the 2 million download mark. Can you freaking even believe that? I am still shocked. Every time I see that number, I'm just like blown away. I knew that we were just having a blast. We were just, having a great old time. I wasn't really paying attention. I paid attention to the monthly downloads, but I wasn't paying attention to the big picture, and it just added up so quickly. It took us 6 years to get to 1 million. And so in my mind, I was thinking, oh, it's going to take us another 6 years. But no, 18 months later, boom, 2 million. So again, thank you so very much. We have the absolute best guests that come on here, and you all show up to support them each and every week. I'm so grateful. Thank you for the feedback that you've given us over the years. I think, crafting the content calendar, it's been really fun the last couple of years because all I do is just take whatever you tell me to do and put it in the show. And it's so easy, and I love it. And I just can't thank you enough. It's interesting, the dedication that you all have, not to kind of drone on about this even more, but I keep thinking about how grateful I am that, you make us a part of your lives. You make us a part of your drive, maybe, or your commute. You maybe, I don't know, doing chores or exercising, going out for a walk, walking the dog. I just, whenever and wherever you're listening to us, it's just, I'm very thankful that you are such a dedicated professional, that you want to get better, to serve your patients more, and that you're willing to kind of put in the time to listen to these guests. I just, again, blown away. Thank you so much. And this week, we have an interesting episode as we tackle the dental hygiene, dental assistant relationship. We talk about what things we all need to be aware of so we can hopefully maybe work a little bit better together, finding that peace in our practices. It's been a little bit of time since we recorded this. And first of all, big thank you to Veronica for recording it with me early on. But since the time that we recorded it, there's been some really interesting legislation that has come out, and it has made for a very lively social media adventure. So you'll have these posts about, hey, support this or don't support this. And then everyone comes out from all sides of dentistry saying, yes, that's right, or no, that's not right. And some of that legislation is what we talk about in the episode of expanded functions or expanded duties dental assistant. And that means, again, different things in different groups. But specifically, some of the legislation that was the most polarizing that I saw on social media was allowing an assistant to scale. And I definitely have lots of thoughts about this. But what I don't like is how angry everyone got about it. And I guess it wasn't everybody. There's actually, truthfully, a small subsection that probably got angry. But people are very passionate about their profession and their job. And, there's, in my opinion, a couple of different categories. There's of of hygienists, of assistants, of doctors. There are the ones that are dedicated who really want to get better all the time. If you're listening to this, it's probably you preaching to the choir here. But there's also those ones that are here for a paycheck. There's also those ones that are here because it's legacy, right? Parents were doctors before they became doctors, grandparents were doctors, or also same with hygiene and dental assisting. You have an aunt, uncle, friend who was a hygienist before and told you to get into it, and so you get into it. And so when I look at some of these legislations that have been passing, I think Veronica mentioned this early in the episode, that it really is about the individual. It's if someone is qualified to do it, if they've been educated to do it. So I mean, I say all that, I guess, to just preface this episode by saying that I really did not intend for this to be any sort of contention, and there definitely wasn't between Veronica and I would love to work with her any day of the week that she wants to work. I would absolutely dig working with her, but it just, we need to be very careful. I think that we express ourselves and our profession on social media like in a good light. Wow, I felt like that was a little bit of a lecture. I didn't mean it for it to be a lecture, but that's kind of what came out. Next week, we're going to be doing an episode with Corey Pinniger. He's been on before. It's been several years since I think it's been 5 years. So the idea of the episode was just kind of a catch up to see where he's been. And we talk a lot about leadership and ownership, not of a practice, but just like ownership of yourself and ownership of the things that you do. And then we pivot into the experiences that he's been having with his dad since his dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And this month, we're now at the end of April, has been Oral Cancer Awareness, but it's also Parkinson's Awareness Month. And so we talk a little bit about that and how his experiences and the challenges that he was facing and the things that he was not made aware of made him want to help out on a larger scale to raise awareness for others. And so it was really good to see him. You're not going to want to miss that episode, so make sure you come back for that. And then the other last thing that I guess I have is, RDH Under One Roof is sold out. I absolutely cannot believe it. I know I've been saying on the podcast for weeks and weeks and weeks, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. It is completely sold out. And I am just so ecstatic. For those of you that got a ticket to get in, I can't wait to see you there. But for those of you who did not, I know that they're going to be opening up registration early again. I think it's in May. So make sure you register early for RDH Under One Roof 2024. It's going to be in Denver. It's going to be a great time. I think you're going to enjoy it. And I think that's all for me. So with that, enjoy this episode with Veronica Blea.
A tale of two hygienists.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the interview portion of the podcast. I'm so excited to be here. We're going to talk about a topic I think that is it. I feel weird calling it a hot button topic because it's a hot button every few months, I feel like. So it's, the role of a dental assistant, the role of dental hygienist, how we interact together. And I think that part of it is, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the role of a dental assistant is. And I think there's also a lot of misunderstanding from both sides of like, what does a hygienist do? And so I'm welcoming Veronica on today because I really want to talk about and get to understand, I guess, the dental assistant a little bit better. So Veronica, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today about all this.
Do you mind if we start just kind of introducing yourself, like how long you've been in the industry, why you started off as a dental assistant, kind of what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been a dental assistant for about 13 years. It was kind of funny. I got started, my mom worked for a dentist as I was growing up, and then I would hang out there after school. And then he was just the coolest guy. So I wanted to be just like him, right? And then I went to college, realized I didn't love school so much. So then the next best thing was dental assisting. And here in Colorado, we have the expanded duties assistants where like I can place fillings and I can do all that stuff. So it was just kind of like the next best thing. So I did that. I still do it on the weekends, but for the last 3 years, I kind of got into an intraoral scanner in our office, completely fell in love with it, moved into that company for training, and now I'm in sales on that side of it. So lots of fun, still very active in the clinical side. And yeah.
Gosh, that's an interesting path. I feel like if there was anyone though that I would want like training me and also doing sales, it'd be someone that like you that has had that pathway, doing restorative, like actually being, an EDDA and all that kind of stuff. This is incredible. So I'm very happy to have you on. I think maybe let's start really basic, if that's okay. I know we have a lot of new grads, a lot of maybe students that are listening. And so maybe kind of describe for us, like, what is the role of a dental assistant? And I think more from like the clinical aspect, like what is like the day-to-day tasks that they're regularly doing?
So for me and my career, what we did, like whatever we can do to make the dentist job
Hmm.
easier, but it's even so much more than that, like it's filling out your notes to make sure that the front office has an easier time, right? Because we're more clinical, we talk the talk and all this stuff. Like they sometimes they're very good at it and they can do it, for us, but sometimes they just need that extra little help there. Also, like just being a strong hygiene assistant and helping the hygiene side of this, like me and all of my hygienist friends, they often would struggle when we would have like temp assistants come in that weren't strong, or
Hmm.
didn't understand like the depths of oral hygiene, to kind of explain that to the patient. It's much more than just, hey, you should brush and floss your teeth twice a day, right?
Right.
So I think knowing those things is helpful. And then on top of that, then you have to keep up on the sterilization side of it, make sure that orders are placed and all of those things depending on what your role is in the back side of that, how big your office is. So when they say that the dental assistant is the dentist's hero, it's kind of true.
Yeah. I mean,
So
and the thing is, like, what our dental assistants had to do, and maybe you practice differently, but it didn't really matter what procedure, whether it was gonna be endo or oral surgery, was gonna be restorative. The assistants had to be well versed in all of those applications and those procedures. Like, it was, I go in to try and help clean up like an endo room. I'm like, I'm lost, you guys. I don't even know what half these things do. Like, it's so intense of what you have to know.
yeah, it's so true. And so, you being a hygienist, like when I would have my hygienist be like, how can I help you out? Because we were running so behind or anything like that. I think us working as a team, like I know that you can't walk into a hygiene or a endo room or an implant room and be like, what am I going to do with this?
Exactly.
Right. However, like I used to just tell my hygienist, just put it all on one tray and just get it out of here and just wipe the room and bring the next patient back,
Yeah.
like all those things. And I know depending on where you practice, like depends on if you can get the patient numb and whatever. But
Mhm.
I used to utilize my hygienist in that way too. I used to be like, can you get us going? We're running behind. Can you just start the numbing? Like,
Yeah.
and then if they need more, then they can get started there. So just really working with my hygienist is what made all of our lives a lot easier.
Well, I think from our side, the hygienist side is you're passionate about dentistry. Like, you love doing this stuff. And
Yeah.
we love working with people who love to do it. We don't want the person that's going to be dragging in at the very beginning, still, not really awake and kind of, oh, I hate my first patient. Like, they don't know who it is yet, but they, like, they hate that first patient all the time. Like, we like working with people who will help us like enjoy the day. One thing I kind of want to circle back to, and maybe actually two things. One, I would love to have a poll of how many hygienists love being pulled away and saying, or not pulled away, but just asked to do local anesthesia. I loved it. Every single time that the assistant, like, Andrew, are you free? Doctor's going to be 10 minutes and we want to get this going. I'm like, great. Yeah. And because part of it is, well, this is a little bit self-serving. This is a little bit selfish. I think a little bit. I wanted to be the one that was helping that schedule like go. Like, it's all you talked about being a hero. It's like I get to be a mini hero for, half a second to keep everybody on time. And then the doctors are so much happier. They're so much more relaxed. So I'd love to do a poll on that to see if people like that. I think I just generally
I,
hate that, but I'm not sure.
say no, it's very interesting because yes, like I've worked with some hygienists that are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do I like really again, but overall, I would say for me in my career is probably like a 50-50.
Now let's ask
So
this. If you were allowed to do it, would you want to do it?
yes,
Yeah. Okay. I
yes,
thought that you
hands
would.
down.
Yeah.
Like I love surgeries. I love all things dentistry. But sorry, I don't love cleaning teeth. Like
No, it's
I think
fine.
it's fantastic. Like people, hygienists that are like really get that satisfaction of that perio one, like where you knock off a big piece of calculus. Like, yeah, that's cool. But I for myself don't think I could do that every day.
Sure.
However, there was a point where I was like, maybe I should go be a hygienist just so I could give anesthetic, and then
Good
just do
point.
that side of it. And then I was like, oh, like here in Colorado, we have 1 2-year program. There's also like a 17-month program here. But then I was like, is that overkill for it? And then I had this conversation with a lot of people where I was like, I think that if they offered a license, where I could go get certified on, and I know it's probably much more in depth than just going and getting a license. Like in my perfect world, it would be that easy, right?
Sure.
But yes, I hands down would want, and I think it would be beneficial, but I know that there's probably a lot involved in that, like I would probably have to carry my own insurance at that point. Because here in Colorado, like I work under my doctor's license, so, and I know that, like you guys have your own licenses. So, but long answer to that. Yes, I would love to.
Well, it's interesting. There was a hygienist friend of mine, and I can't remember exactly what part of the scope of practice is, but he went back after he was a hygienist. He went back and got his EDDA. So in Washington State, an EDDA is a dental assistant. Other states have like EDDAs as hygienists and stuff like that too. But this one very specifically, and it was I believe it was take like a final impression or something very specific that for whatever reason, hygienists are not allowed to do, is that one line item. He's like, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to get that. And he did. And so, I mean, I totally get where you're coming from. If we could have a program, this has been something I've wanted for a really long time, is to allow the competent professional to kind of get to that next level.
Sure.
My problem has always been, I don't trust the people that are putting those programs on, because it's all about the money for them and it's not about, the quality. But if there was a way to do it right, oh yeah, absolutely. I also want to come back to the notes. You mentioned notes earlier. So this has been kind of a little bit of a debate with, hygienists kind of, but also dental assistants that I've worked with in the past. Who is responsible for the notes? Ultimately, the doctor obviously is responsible for all the clinical notes. But is it also, to your understanding, kind of the role to at least start the notes or do the majority of the notes? What's your vision of that?
This is good. And it's very controversial in the fact of whose job is it? Because,
Sure.
right, nobody ever wants to say, like, it's my job. As I understand it, I am responsible for writing down and documenting everything that I did in that operatory,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So now, however, like the office that I work at right now on the weekends, we have just a template, right? And you just kind of go through it. Now, some people don't do anything. They just go through that template and they're like, tooth number 13 is what we worked on. Well, what did you do on tooth number 13? Like filling tooth number 13. Okay, well, what surfaces did you do on that tooth? And then there's other people that fill out, like, write a book, Now, how, like, I worked in an office once, like it ended up going to court and notes were not documented correctly. And so then the doctor, and it was because an assistant was seeing the patient like that doctor wasn't there that day, but the patient would come in for an adjustment and she would adjust. Well, she would just not go pull the chart and write the notes, So then when they were in the litigation side of it, it was like, well, we saw him all the time. And then they were like, but there's no notes documenting that, So then at that moment, that's when my doctor was like, I am doing all the notes. And he would no joke, stay there till like midnight at night, doing his notes. And I was like, well, that's like, we're doing a huge disservice to him. Just start it so he can check it, and then as he starts to trust you, like it becomes just a glance, So like I said in the beginning, like I believe as an assistant, our job is to make their life easy, right? And then that's ultimately what makes you, even as a hygienist, like us more and want to work with us and trust us, right? Like I've worked with hygienists that know, like, they want to do double hygiene or accelerated hygiene with me because they know that I did the exam, I polished and flossed, I went over OHI, all of those things. So when they sit down, all they have to do is scale.
Oh, man. You are a dream.
And then
you are a dream. I love this already. But yeah.
But not everybody does that, like, and there have been times like where I lack in that, like I've had a rough day and the last thing I want to do is go every half hour polishing and flossing and brush your teeth correctly and all these things, but at the end of the day, you got to do it. Right.
Yeah.
So.
No, I would say, that was, my problem that I always have is like, I'm not your boss as a hygienist. I'm your teammate, but the not the hierarchy, but the whatever it was, the chain of command, whatever you want to call it, at the place that I was even the doctors were employees. And so they weren't really like that authoritarian. And so it was almost like we all had to figure out stuff. And so because of that, I really never loved telling the dental assistants what to do. I would on occasion be like, hey, can you help me can you do this? Or when we're working together, this is how it works best for me. These are the things that I would love for you to do. I'll do these things. But the point was always, look, if we can just get through all of this as fast as we can together, like we have more time to like hang out. Like we can just like slow down on our notes. We can just like enjoy life more if we just get this busted out real quick.
Exactly. And I think that that is the hard part from being an assistant. Like, we don't like to take orders. And you and I both know the rivals of the
Mhm.
assistants and the hygienists, right? But once you can create that working relationship, like you said, everything is just much easier. We get it done. We're leaving on time. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Because at the end of the day, like, I had hygienists who they would be done with their day, and then I would be in the back doing instruments. And they would be like, I don't know how to set up your tray. However, I do know that you need suctions. I do know that you need gauze. And they would put that on there and they would help me.
Yeah.
And so then it would be done. Versus and I also worked in the offices where we didn't have that, and then they would walk out the door and I'd be like I'm stuck doing your instruments. Like,
Yeah.
so I like, just like you said, if once you can establish that and work together, it's fantastic. Now you did hit a good point on employee dentists. And for any of you guys in school that are doing this, please, please, please just treat it like you own that office, because and this is me having been a trainer and all these things, like I went into offices to train on CBCTs and their scanners, and I had employee dentists that would just show up late or be on their phone and not enforce anything. And I'd be like, when I'm walking out of here, I'm walking out of here. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not giving you my contact information to call me later. Like, this was a big old waste of time. Like, I know how to use this stuff, kind of like you could hand scale in your sleep pretty much,
Mhm.
right? Or like talk someone through it.
Yeah.
Same idea. So there's a very big difference on employee dentists and like owner dentists. And my best advice is just think of it as a team. Like, we are a team. Let's figure out we spend the most time with each other, right? Your work family is who you spend the
For
most time
sure.
with.
Yeah.
So figure out how to make it work.
Let me ask this about the owner doctor versus the employee doctor. Do you find that you have a preference for working with one as an assistant, as opposed to, like, for instance, like maybe the owner doctor is maybe a little bit more kind of aggressive and like maybe a little bit more like brisk with their words, maybe more direct, or the employee doctor might be a little bit more chill and kind of fun and like more of a relaxed atmosphere? Or is that not necessarily a stereotype that's true?
No, I 100% think that that's true.
Do you enjoy working in that relaxed atmosphere, or do you like, no, let's just get some production going?
Well, me as an assistant, my bonus was always based on production.
There it is.
So that's why I'm very money motivated.
Yeah.
So that was how I started utilizing my hygienists. Like, I would go in to, if a patient needed a crown, I'd be like, "Hey, you want to do that today? Like, you're here. It'll be real quick if we can
Mhm.
get this started." And I'd hand the hygienist anesthetic and I'd be like, "I'm going to go set up my room. Can you just move them over when you're done?" But with employee dentists, and I mean, this is a stereotype on all, and I hate to loop everybody into
Sure.
this, but everyone's like, we'll do that later.
Yeah.
We'll schedule them back.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. So, but I've also worked in private offices where they have not been so fun. But
Mhm.
I think it just all plays out in the overall environment of the office, if it's pretty lax and easy to work with, or if it's hard. But I think there's ways to have those conversations, like, "Hey, I need you to get this done," versus like, "You better get this
Oh,
done."
yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit more back on the DA, RDH, I don't know, communication strategies. I think a lot of it, hopefully we're going to be addressing today, is like we'll better understand each other's roles. But what are some things maybe that we need to address or talk about to create better communication between the two groups?
I think just creating that team environment right in the get-go solves a lot of those problems, because I'll be the first to say, assistants can sometimes be prima donnas, like, we want, I don't know, like, we think we're the top of the food chain in the office, right? And because we do it all, we're totally overworked, we're all these things. But if you can create that dynamic and working relationship with everybody, it all just becomes a lot easier. I've had it where, like, if your patient cancels and I need an x-ray on a patient, we're doing a crown, whatever, my
Mhm.
hygienist will go in there and just get it for me. Or if I have a new patient and they're not busy, they'll take my FMX, you
Nice.
know?
Yeah.
So, however, if you don't have that good working relationship and communication, like, "Hey, let's help each other out, like, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine," type of thing, then you don't have that. And
Mhm.
then here just comes all this resentment,
Mhm.
right?
Do you expect,
So
I mean, obviously you've worked, long enough with your hygienist to get to that point, but do you expect right off the bat that someone's going to see that, hey, I don't have a patient right now as a hygienist. I don't have a patient right now. I know that they're going to need an FMX. They're also running behind. Do you expect them to pay attention to the office flow like that?
I don't expect anything from anybody. It's just
So you don't get
helpful.
disappointed, right?
Well, I think there's that too,
Yeah,
because if I were to expect that from you and you didn't do it, then again, here comes that
sure.
resentment, you
Yeah.
know. So I just think that it's helpful if we pay attention. Same for, like I've had it where my hygienist has a single column and they're just running a little behind. The next
Mhm.
patient's here. And I'm like, let me just get them started for you. And it might even just be something as much as like seating the patient. Like maybe it's your SRP patient that came in. Well, I can't numb for you. I
Right.
can't really do anything, but I can seat the patient and at least have a little conversation with them so they're not stuck in the waiting room upset that they're late,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, that's good. Let me ask this. It's maybe kind of a similar topic, but in the dental assisting programs that people are going through, is it really explained what the role of a hygienist is, or or what? I guess maybe that's a terrible question. What is explained about what the role of the hygienist is?
Honestly, the program that I went to, they didn't really explain much of that.
Interesting.
Like we didn't talk much about it. We kind of, like I knew that I could polish and floss,
Hmm.
and I know that that's not the case in some states,
That's true. Yeah.
like in Colorado, it's interesting. That's kind of how I got into the whole training thing, was because I felt like I was just really at the top of my game as far as assisting went, but I also can't leave Colorado easily. Like I'd have to go through a whole EFTA program that's state certified, and I didn't have to go through any of that here. Like I was trained on the job and all those things. Even dental assisting, you don't have to go. You can be trained on the job.
Yeah.
So I just knew that I could polish and floss, and that's probably where I would start, was as a hygiene assistant, which was fair. And like as I understood you guys, was you scaled, you did deep cleanings, and that was it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
It's very, I mean, obviously, I'm sure your views of what a hygienist does now are like completely different, but it's interesting. I think in all of our programs, we were never taught what assistants do. I mean, we assumed because the term was assistant that you just assisted the doctor. Like that was the expectation. Never knew to what extent or degree and how flexible you have to be and like how multitasking you have to be until we see it firsthand. And then it's years worth of different assistants, different procedures, different dynamics that we see that we really, I think, at least for the most of us probably, that we really, I guess, found that respect for the profession compared to like what it was. And I think the hygienists
yeah.
that maybe are not really respectful, I just don't think they've seen enough. I don't think that maybe they've had just bad assistants, or maybe they just have a bad attitude themselves, or maybe all of the different things, but they haven't, maybe they've been in the one office the whole entire time that doesn't have, a dynamic like that. So I mean, it's interesting. I think it goes both ways that we're not really taught. And then doctors, doctors aren't really taught exactly what it is that a hygienist does. But then when I've talked to the newer docs that come into our practice, and I say, okay, like, here are some of the things that I want you to kind of have your assistant do, and then that way it frees you up to do this and this and this. They're like, oh, can we have our assistant do that? I'm like, yeah, they're absolutely qualified to do that. So even they don't know state specific generally all that scope of practice for the dental assistant. It's very bizarre. So
It really is. I totally agree with you on that.
we just need to communicate more, I think, in our schools. Okay.
For sure.
So you're an EFTA. So this is a controversy that has happened in many, many states. And it's about legislation. So there's legislation that's out there every year, every other year, whatever it is, that is trying to expand the scope of practice for a dental assistant. And it's not so much the placing fillings and things like that. That's already kind of been established in a lot of states, but it's now moving into scaling, like scaling teeth. So from your experience, and I know this, it may or may not be kind of a new thought process for you, but like what are your thoughts, or what are you hearing with the assisting community on, is that good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? Where are you guys all lying?
So I think that you guys as hygienists, like you said, it's more than just scaling teeth. It's more than all these things. And I think that I would say, like, if I could remove, calculus above the gums. Like I here in Colorado, like I can polish 1 millimeter underneath the gums, so it's just like a quick underneath thing. However, I do think that you could do damage, if you don't understand. And that's where I think like schooling comes into place, That's why it kills me sometimes when I go, like my mom, she has a set of scalers in her bathroom, and I'm like, Mom, but you worked at the front office. You don't know what that is. Like you're going to mess yourself up.
Yeah.
Or even they sell scalers in the dental aisle
They do.
at the store, I'm like, someone's going to really hurt themselves. And so I don't know, like for me, I like being able to do more, like there was a time where I was like, well, because how I understand and not how I understand, because I know it's more greater than that, is I can do things as long as it can be undone. Right. And so there was a time where I was kind of like, well, why can't I tie sutures? Those can be undone. You just cut them out, but not thinking about like I'm piercing the gums, So I think it would be helpful. I think if I were assisting you and I went in and, like I scaled above the gums. However, that also takes more time from me, maybe helping you with your next patient.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
Right. So I think that it's one of those things that if I truly wanted to get into scaling and it wanted it to be that way, why would you not just go to school and get your be a hygienist and then make more money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then here's what's going to happen is you're going to give me the ability to do these things like do calculus. And guess what? I'm going to want to raise.
Yep.
And guess what? Chances are I'm not going to get it,
Yeah. I think you're following the logic that we all have. I think I think that when we oppose as hygienists, it's not because we don't think that you're good enough or qualified enough or any of these things. Like, it literally is just because the dynamics don't make sense. I mean, not the dynamics, the flow just doesn't make sense. It's going to cost the doctors more money. It's going to pull the assistants, to a different area. So they're not going to be able to do the things that they're already doing. They're already stretched thin. They're already overworked. They're already exhausted. And you're going to be asking them to do one more thing and expect them not to ask for more money. It's like, that's a ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
But where I think that you're right, and I love kind of where your brain goes, is that any of these tasks, as long as there's an educational component, and I like third party, verification, take a board exam. So for the EDDAs in Washington, they have to sit for a restorative board exam. I love that. So the same thing, if you're going to be doing, scaling or whatever, even if it's super gingival or 1 millimeter below or whatever the term is, then take a board exam for that, get the right education first, and not just like a weekend course, like a right education, and then just, do a board exam to prove your competency. And I have no problem with that because I was a beneficiary of that. I did local anesthesia, I did fillings, I did all of that stuff, but I had to take board exams for all of them. So
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. How has the journey been as you're transitioning from kind of a primarily clinical role to a more of a non-clinical role? You're still in dentistry, but how has that transition been for you?
It has been fantastic. And you said it earlier in the sense that, like if you wanted anyone training you, it'd be someone that's clinical, and I really think that is what gave me my, it makes me more dynamic of a trainer and now into sales side of it, because earlier I was in a meeting and they were like, you can geek out with dentists on all of this. You can talk the talk with them. It's not just some random person being like, oh, well, this is the button you push. I'm not real sure why you push that button, but there it is.
Yeah.
Like I teach in workflows and like when you're going to use this and how this is going to be productive. And I also think that they trust me in the fact that like I used this specific product to get it done, So I think it gives me that chance to just have that trust, Now, here's where I also have to learn, and this is me going from clinical to sales, because like, for example, my favorite patient of all time that gave me some of my best life advice, just sitting in a chair together, the front office did not like that guy, and it was because they had to take the money, right? Like that's where it gets weird. And so for me, like I was at a trade show last week and, I can sit there and I can get everybody excited about the product and be like, yeah, can you see this in your office? And they're like, yeah. And then it's like, oh, well, let's talk about the money. And
Yes.
so that's where I struggle with it. And I need to kind of take off my clinical trainer hat and put on like my sales hat,
Yeah.
but overall, I think having my clinical background and it being as extensive as it is helpful.
Yeah.
And I think overall that's what's going to help me succeed. So
I think it's so funny that I trained hygienists for years and stuff as well. But the last couple of years as a hygiene director, it was really about a lot about money too. It was trying to show value for the money that we're asking for and things like that. Doesn't matter where you are at as a clinician, it always feels a little bit weird to ask for money. And I don't know what that is about it, but and maybe it's because we're leveraging their health versus money or something weird that just kind of feels weird, but it's just, we all have that problem. So that was an interesting kind of insight. So last couple of questions, as you're kind of just like thinking about like big picture things, any advice that you have for hygienists as they're working with their dental assistants?
My biggest thing is understand where we are coming from. If I'm running around crazy and then you're like, hey, or you just leave a stack of your trays in the background and I'm busy, like, yeah, I'm going to be mad at you,
Yeah.
And in the same, and twofold for that, like assistants have to understand that the hygienist is busy as well, but I think if we can kind of switch the thing, like from assistant and maybe hygienists viewing us as assistants, like we are there to cover your slack and more so of we are a team, like how do we help each other? I think that would take a lot of the animosity away from it,
Sure.
because like I said, you've worked with those assistants. I've worked with those hygienists, I've had some that are like my best of friends, and I've had some where I'm like, gosh, I really don't want to work with that person, and then you do everything in your power to make their day hard. And then they do it to you too, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just if we understand each other a lot more and then really just focus on how do we be team players. And I know that world is kind of hard right now, but I think that if we could just figure that out again, then it's a lot more helpful.
100%. I couldn't agree more. There are going to be probably people that want to dive into this a little bit deeper. What is the best way for people to follow up with you if they have any questions or thoughts?
Honestly, the best way to get a hold of me, you can all shoot me emails. My email is vablea@gmail.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, just Veronica Blea there. And then I also have an Instagram where I started a project. This is some of you that have intraoral scanners, specifically the Dexis IS scanner. You can follow me at Fun Fact Friday with V. I started this project a couple years ago. Me being a dental assistant, I learned a lot of different techniques and all these things on Facebook and Instagrams, right? Just follow these pages and I'm scrolling through. So I kind of wanted to mimic that. So every Friday, I post a training video on our products. I do launch my webinars or any speaking events that I'm doing. So you can always reach out to me there as well. That's probably the easiest one to get me because that goes straight to my personal phone. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk about it.
Veronica, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.